Thank you for inviting me, Mark. Hello, Stephanie.
Hi, Eric. It is such a delight and such a pleasure to have you here today, and thank you. I wanted to introduce you to our group and young global citizens. I'm sure you've had a little bit of a preamble about it. It is a network of schools that has grown enormously even over these last few weeks, and now have approximately 600 schools in 12 countries, either joining live or watching interviews in class for later educational purposes. Today's interview is incredibly on point for the pandemic and for our movement of connecting young people, young global citizens with people who inspire them and who are from all different other countries in the world. For today, it is an opportunity for us to instill our youth that are on the call and to inspire them for the love of music in today's context, today's interview, and just learn a little bit more knowledge about music composers and yourself, Eric, and your journey with music and your journey with choir. And I just want to say, as sort of an opening place for this interview, listening to the second half of The Secret Veil for me was incredibly moving. It was incredibly inspiring. I'm not in a choir, but to hear just how powerful and how meaningful, how graceful, and how it came definitely, you can feel how it came from your heart and those who performed it. I also wanted to share, and perhaps also you can elaborate this as we go along. Choir isn't somewhere where you started, and it wasn't until later years. I think, if my memory serves me, it wasn't until you were around 18 and going into university. Up until then, you were composing more pop-based music, and then fell in love with what you're doing now.
Right.
So for our young people on the call and our young global citizens, I want you to be inspired and remember that there's always aspirations, and there's always dreams, and there's always things we love and do and we move toward, but we don't necessarily start there from the very beginning. Sometimes the journey along the way takes us into other seas and waters where we find our true passions, and that's where we can really evolve from there. So again, thank you for being with us today, and I am going to pass it back to Mark Tremblay, and we'll get some questions going.
Thank you, Stephanie.
You're welcome.
By the way, I should ask everybody, while we're if I play this, can you hear that over there? Great. I've got a little keyboard here next to me, just in case I need to play anything or show any examples. I want to make sure it worked. So hello, everybody. First of all, I'm Eric. It's so nice to talk with all of you. I live in Los Angeles. I don't know if it's cold now in Canada. Maybe you're getting an early spring. It's cold. Yes. Right now, it's amazing. Yeah, you're in Celsius like the rest of the world, right? In Canada? Yeah, here in America, we're in Fahrenheit still, but in Celsius today, it's supposed to be 27, 28, which is typical. I can look out my window right here and there's oranges growing and lemons. It's like this all the time in Los Angeles. And I'm very happy to be spending this time with you. Mark was asking about the virtual choir. So this happened, can you imagine, this happened back in 2009, 12 years ago. So some of you weren't even born when I first came up with this idea. And what happened was this young woman, she was only 17 years old. Her name was Britlin. She uploaded to YouTube a video. And what she did is she took a piece that I had composed and she pushed play on it. And then she sang the top line, or what's called the soprano line, over the top of it. And she sent it out onto YouTube hoping it would find me, like a little electronic message on a bottle. Like she didn't even know me. And a friend of mine saw it and sent me a link. And so I did see it. And I saw Britlin's video and I thought, this is so beautiful. It's so pure. Her voice is so pure and her intention is very pure. And so I had this very, very simple idea, which was, I wonder if I could get 25 people to do what Britlin is doing. If they just upload their part, the soprano part or the alto part or the tenor part or the bass part, and if they just all sing in the same tempo, right, the same speed, and the same piece, of course, and in the same key, then my big plan was that I would just take those videos on YouTube and open them all in different tabs on the browser and then try to push play as fast as possible on all of them so that they would start playing. And then my idea was, if they're all playing like that, this choir would emerge, right? This virtual choir. And I didn't know if it would work. It was really just an experiment. But not only did it work in terms of the music, it sounds musical, but people came from all over the place to join that first virtual choir. There were 185 singers from 12 different countries who sent in their videos. And then instead of just clicking play on all the YouTube videos, we stitched them together and we made the first virtual choir. I'll play you just a little bit of that right now. You ready? And I'll stop it right there. So you can already see all of these people's faces, right? Coming in from different countries and singing, and all of them doing amazingly what you also do when you sing in a regular choir, which is that you come together to simply be part of something larger than yourself. You add your voice, no matter what that voice sounds like, to these other voices, and in doing so, you make this thing that is bigger, that's more dynamic. And we really didn't think anybody in the world would want to see this kind of thing, except for me and my other fellow choir geeks. And it went viral. The video got a couple million views in the first week. And because of that, then singers started seeing it around the world. And they started writing to me and saying, I don't know what this is, but I have to be a part of it. When is the next virtual choir? And I never even thought that there'd be another virtual choir. They're really hard to make. They take a long time. But we talked and we thought, okay, maybe we can do another one. And the next one that we built had 3,746 singers from 73 countries. Here, I'll play you a little bit of that. Isn't that the craziest thing? And I'll stop talking here in just a moment, Mark, but what I find super beautiful about this is that also, like in a virtual choir, there were suddenly people that were joining and having a meaningful experience that was much bigger than just submitting their little video. There was a man who had been blind since he'd sung in choirs when he was a kid, and then at 17 years old had gone legally blind. He could barely see the faintest light, and for 30 years couldn't sing in the virtual choir because he couldn't see. And now suddenly he could get close enough to the screen and see my little conductor track. He was able to join the virtual choir. There was a man in Cuba who desperately wanted to join the virtual choir, but because of government regulations, could only upload 1 meg files. But his video was 26 megs. So we got together with him and we taught him how to split it into 26 1 meg files. He sent them all over to us. We stitched them back together. Cuba became part of the virtual choir. There was a young man and a young woman whose videos just randomly happened to be close to each other. The man was from Canada. The woman, I can't remember where she was from. Definitely not Canada. But anyway, they kind of liked the way they looked to each other. So they reached out to each other. They met and then they got married. These two people met in virtual choir and then got married. So it's, in a way, the virtual choirs make these incredible connections with a lot of people who have never met before and will never, ever meet before. The last thing I'll say is about the virtual choirs is that it's very, very important to us that anybody who wants to join can. There's no auditions at all. There are people who are professional singers, who are very, very good singers, and people who have never been in a choir before. It's their very first time trying it. And there are people who can really read music, people who can't read music at all. And we've had singers as young as 3 years old and as old as 103 years old, from every race and color and creed possible. And in the latest virtual choir we did, which maybe I can show a little bit later on, which has over 17,000 singers in it, there are over 24 blind singers. They were able to download sheet music and print it out on a Braille printer so they could feel the sheet music and the words and sing it. There's 12 deaf signers, so they're not singing, they're actually using sign language to communicate it. And there's even a whole community of people who have a disease called cystic fibrosis. And cystic fibrosis is a disease in your lungs. And it's a strange disease in that if you have it, you can never, ever be in the same room as someone who also has cystic fibrosis, because you might share bacteria, which can be very dangerous to each other. So the only way they can ever be in a choir together is like this, is virtually. Anyway, Mark, I'll stop talking now, but that's the virtual choir.
We could listen for 1 hour just for this part.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have a call Alvin Buckwood.
Hello, Mr. Whitacre.
Oh, please call me Eric, Chris.
Eric, all right. On your website, I noticed you feature Teacher of the Week. And I have found that sometimes teachers aren't always the favorite person of certain people in the world. But anyway, I was wondering about this connection you have with schools and with teaching, and why this is so close to your heart.
It's a great question. Yes, so on as Chris is saying that on my website, every week we feature a different teacher of the week, and they come from all over the world, and their students submit them. They say, here's why this teacher is so great and why we'd like for them to be teacher of the week. And then we pick one and highlight them. For me, teaching is the most noble profession there is. I know a lot of you students are like, teachers, just like Chris said, but how best to describe this? As you get older, students, you'll see that there are two basic kind of paths for the way you'll live your life, and especially your work life. There is the kind of job that you choose, where you say, okay, I want to be a business person. I'm going to go into business. I'm going to learn about that. I'm going to do that. That's perfectly fine. That's a way to go. But then there are these other jobs that choose you. I can relate to this very much because music is like this. I look back, and early on, I was very interested in science and astrophysics, the study of stars and galaxies. I was interested in computers. I was interested in languages. I'm interested in cooking. I'm interested in all these different things. But really, when I look back, I think I didn't have a choice. I was going to be a musician. It's just the way my body and my heart and my brain are made. Teaching is the same thing. Teaching is rarely a profession that people choose to go into. They're born teachers. They have a calling to it. And they'll do anything to teach. It's what makes their life have meaning, is to show up every day and to, well, the Buddhists have a beautiful saying, which is, may I be a bridge, a boat, or a raft for all who wish to cross the water. And teachers are like that. They just want to help any student to get them from here to here. And so, especially during these times, during pandemic, we're all on Zoom. And students, I think we can all agree that Zoom really sucks. All right? It's the worst. It's the worst. If we never have to do Zoom again, that would be a great day. But as bad as it is for students, for teachers, imagine how much stress. Every day they have to show up. They're using all this technology. You've probably all been in Zoom classes where they can't figure out the camera or the sound or something's happening in the background. To you, it's like, oh God, they can't figure this out again. To the teachers, there's so much stress. They have to do this several times a day. And all they want to do is help. They want to teach students. And it's like they've also been handcuffed. All the tools that they use with humor and with the looks on their faces and their eyes and the material that they really want to teach you, they can't do it anymore because of Zoom. And so for me, teachers are really, like I said, it's such a noble profession, but also one of the most important jobs that are out there. And so anything I can do to highlight teachers and show the important work they do is very close to my heart. It's
Okay, and one of my students has a question for you. So here's one of my students. Here.
Oh, great.
Okay. Hello, Mr. Eric.
Hello.
My name is Faber. Recently, you were named as a Yamaha artist. Can you tell us more about this partnership?
Yeah, so I was named what's called a Yamaha artist, and Yamaha makes pianos. In fact, that's my Yamaha piano sitting right back there. And basically, the partnership is that I'm super interested in education and making sure that young people get a music education. Yamaha is also very interested in this, so it's a nice fit. For me, every young person should be studying music. It's a no-brainer. I don't know if there are any administrators on this call or politicians, but every study we have shows that playing together music or singing together simply makes better citizens. It improves your grades across all disciplines: science, math, technology, English. It's also music, but it makes you have more empathy, compassion. It teaches you how to be part of something larger than yourself, how to think about others. It's just good. If it were up to me, every day would start with students making music together. That's just how it would start, the first hour. I don't know why music educators or music administrators haven't realized this is the best. Also, what a fun way to start the day, right? I mean, who wants to start with math? Ugh, sorry if there's any math teachers. That's just a rough way to start a day. But yeah, so that's what Yamaha is. And so I'm really proud to be a Yamaha artist. Thank you for asking about it. Also, I love your shirt, the original Batman logo. Very nice.
Okay. I was also wondering, how do you compose a song?
Ooh, it's a big question. But I can give you a basic idea. Okay, so for me, when I'm writing a piece of music, even if it's very, very simple on the surface, just a pretty piece, like that first piece that I played you, right, where the very first virtual choir, where they're all moving this way, and it's kind of gold and purple and yellow. So the way it starts is like this. I'll play my piano now. You hear these notes from the choir. Remember this? It's just that simple. Now, what I do when I start, before I write a note of music, is I think, what are the different layers I want the piece to have? So there's lots of planning. I'm thinking about, how do I want the music to not just be music, but to be doing all of this other stuff as well at the same time? And in this case, with with that piece, it's called Lux Aurumque, which in Latin means light and gold. My idea was that the choir would crescendo, so they would get louder for 4 beats. So it'd go like, and then take crescendo, 2, 3, rest. Then do it again. Crescendo, 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 day crescendo, rest. Very simple gesture, right? Like this. And before I wrote even a note of music, I drew pictures of that shape and how I wanted it to function. And then what I do is, the reason I'm doing this is because my idea is I want to teach the audience how and when to breathe without them realizing they're being taught to do that. So the idea is, every time the choir is crescendoing like this, doing this thing here, then what happens is people start to breathe in. And then that rest is sort of, everybody got that? Good, we're going to do it again. And if you do it right, if the choir performs those swells right, then by measure 9, we've done that 4 different times, and you can't help it. You're just sitting in the audience and you start to relax. You breathe slower. You fall into the pattern of the breathing. So for me, when I'm writing a piece of music, it's not only that I'm looking for the right notes, I'm looking for this other thing that's happening below the music. And then the idea is that if this is my basic shape, right? This is the shape. Then, like in the natural world, I not only want this to exist on the smallest level, right? So that's my little, what we call a motive. I call it my golden brick, this idea that has the whole piece in it. So not only do I want the little part to look like this, If you look at the graph of the entire piece, it has the same shape. The whole piece has the same shape. This is what we call fractals. And so just like in nature, you have an expression that's happening at the smallest level and at the biggest level. And then the last thing I'll say, because this might be interesting for all of you, have any of you seen Frozen? Do you know this movie, Frozen? Yeah. So, you know, Let It Go, Let It Go. Catchiest song ever written, right? Once you've heard it, it's even worse than Hamilton. Once you've got it in your ears, you can't stop listening to it. Okay, but what's cool about this song, so if I play this, right, you can hear this. Okay, so if you take the top note on each of these phrases, if you go, let it go, then let it go. So now there's your top note the first time, let it go. So now you're going, can't hold it back anymore, let it go, then let it go. So now you've got, those are your top notes, right? Then they sing, turn away and slam the door. So now you've got, and then finally, I don't care. So if you take the top notes in those phrases, what you get is this shape. It's a scale going up, but better, what it is it's Elsa's journey. Elsa is trying to climb. She's trying to get to the top of what she wants to achieve. And when she finally gets to the top of it, the highest note in the song, she sings, I don't care. And that's the most important message in the song, right? So what they've done is they've built into the piece this other stuff that's happening. Now, when we listen to it, it's not that we hear that. We just hear a nice song and it's catchy. But I think there's a part of our brain that is hearing all of that. And that makes it super sticky. Our brain learns and changes because it's hearing all of these layers moving at the same time.
Thank you.
Great question.
It was amazing.
Thank you. Chris, that's it. Thank you. Madame Reed, would you please introduce your school? And you're going to take the next 4 questions.
Absolutely. We are so honored to be a part of this. Our first question is by a student, Sophia.
Can you share more about music as a universal language and as healing tool for making during the pandemic and even after the pandemic, especially when it comes to young people or people dealing with anxiety or emotional struggles or facing challenges in life?
Wow. Thank you, Sophia. It's Sophia, right? Even though your boss is Naomi. Yeah, it's that's a big question, Sophia. Thank you. The best way I can describe it is this. So remember I mentioned these words, the golden brick, before? When I'm writing a piece of music, I'm looking for a chord or a couple of chords or a few notes that have all of the DNA, all of the laws for the piece in just that bit. So the very first piece I wrote was called Go Lovely Rose. And it starts like this. It goes, and it just builds this simple cluster. The choir sings that. Now, I'm not sure why, but just those close notes together, for instance, like the sopranos are singing that, the altos are singing that, and especially all of them together, it doesn't sound so great on the piano, but when you hear a choir do that, it just makes my heart explode. It also sends chills down my spine. I just have a physical reaction to it. Okay, so I knew early on that these kind of chords could have an effect on me. And then the next piece I wrote was a piece called Cloudburst. And Cloudburst had the same chord, but in a different key. It went. So you hear that same chord, right? And I remember one night while I was writing it, my thumb slipped and I added a note and then it became this. You hear that new note? So now you've got. Okay, now again on piano, that doesn't sound so interesting, but when you hear voices do that, oh, it's like honey and butter dripping from the sky. It's the most, you want to die. It's so beautiful. And especially when you're in the middle of it, singing it, you're one of those notes. It's got kind of a shimmer. It's as if the chord is moving at the speed of light and standing still at the same time. It's just humming. And the piece is called Cloudburst. And it's it's written because I was trying to describe the way I felt watching a cloudburst happen. I'd seen this spectacular cloudburst where the clouds, lightning and rain coming down. And I realized that this set of notes sounded to me the way I felt about the rain. And you'll understand what I mean when I say that when I say kind of a sense of wonder and awe and excitement and even maybe a little fear, the moment I say those words out loud, they become something else, right? It's hard to describe emotions. And so it's actually better just to go, that's so much clearer to express an idea like rain. You don't have to deal with words. You don't have to deal with, I can just do that and everybody hears it and goes, oh yeah, I know what that is in my bones. I know that. So music has this power. Music has this ability to speak in a language that isn't words, that isn't visual, that can go straight to the core of our bodies and our brains. And that's what's so important. And then what you can do is you can use that language to heal. You can find combinations of notes that work in the body and in the mind. And all of you must have experienced this, where you're in a certain mood. Maybe you're just down, and either you listen to a really upbeat song and boom, you're suddenly like, okay, that's all right, I'm all right. Or if you're really down and you listen to an even more down song and you can kind of connect with it and you feel, oh yeah, that reflects how I feel, that helps me transform it. It's this language that only exists in sound. I find it super beautiful and super important. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sophia.
Cal, sorry. There he is.
Hello, my name is Baden. You've launched your virtual choir series in partnership with UNICEF during the Commonwealth Canadian Games opening in 2014. Our movement existence is to serve the goals of UNICEF and UN Sustainable Development Goals. Our goal this year is clean water access. What can you tell us about your work with UNICEF and your belief in their mission?
UNICEF is super important. And every year a better cause. For me, when I worked with UNICEF, they wanted me to make a children's virtual choir, which really was 18 years old and younger. But this is where we had singers that were 3 years old, but also 4, 5, 6. Cutest thing you've ever seen, by the way. If you've ever seen a 3-year-old trying to deal with headphones and even just have focus enough to get through a whole song, you see them fidgeting and trying to just, the cutest thing ever. And so we wrote a song, or I wrote a song, but we made a virtual choir to this song called What If? And the idea is, what if we could change things? What if things can get better? And especially, I believe that young generation has the chance to make things much, much better. All of you. For me, it was a personal highlight because it was at the opening of the Commonwealth Games, this time in Scotland, in Glasgow. And there were 60,000 people in the audience. And if you can imagine this, the virtual choir screen that we got to project all of our singers on was 100 meters long as a football pitch, a screen 100 meters long. Can you even imagine that? And then I was conducting them virtually and a real choir down on the stage. And at some point I turned around to the audience to get them all clapping like this. And everybody was holding up their cell phone doing this. And it's probably the closest that I'll ever be to being a rock star. I was in this massive stadium. Everybody was doing this. I was on stage with an actor named James McAvoy, and we were just doing this. And I thought, this is it. All right, this is as close as I'll ever get.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cool hat, by the way.
Thanks.
All right, our next question is by Carl.
Hey, Carl.
Hi. Can you tell us more about what made you such a pioneer in technology to bring people together? You must have this incredible love for your fellow people, and you seem to have a lot of faith in your young people, especially.
Yeah, that's true. So in terms of being a pioneer, Carl, thank you. but I don't really feel at all like a pioneer. It really was just an experiment. It was, what if I do this and what if I do that? And weirdly, can you imagine this, Carl? For 10 years, I made these virtual choirs, and I was just making them on my own. And it was kind of like, okay, this is a cool thing that we're doing. But then when the COVID pandemic hit, suddenly it became the only way that people could make music together in a choir. And I think that's the day that I became a pioneer, when everybody said, how do you make these things? And so it's been very strange on a personal level to watch something that was just an experiment, just a tiny little experiment. When I was a kid, I played with these things called Tonka toys and also erector sets. Do you have those things where you just build things, little machines? But basically, you just build things, little machines, and then you push an on button and the thing does its thing, whatever it is. You can make little Ferris wheels or little racetracks. And I always thought the virtual choir was just like that. It was like, okay, what if I put a whole bunch of little parts together and then just push play? Oh, look, a little machine happens. It never ever occurred to me that suddenly everybody around the world would be doing this same crazy thing. Bigger than that is what you mentioned in the second part of your question, which is this love for humanity and people. I genuinely feel in my heart that people are inherently good, that they have good in them and they want to do good. And the idea is the conditions for goodness need to be set. And that means that people can go to the good side or the dark side depending on where they are and what conditions have been set for them. It's very important to be thinking about that all the time. And I think that a lot of that has to do with leadership. It has to be with who's at the top or who's steering the ship. That will be a direct reflection on how much goodness people bring from themselves. And so for me, with these virtual choirs, it's a very small way of being the leader and saying, here's what I believe. I believe that we're good. I believe that every voice counts. I believe that we should respect each other. I believe in empathy and compassion and integrity. I believe in being a good citizen. And once you start with that, then everything else sort of unfolds in a good way.
Thank you.
Perfect. And our last question from Nicole Lumsden is from Abby.
Hello, my name is Abby.
Hi, Abby.
Your wife is an opera singer and from Belgium. Do you also speak French and other languages? Do you think there is a connection between languages and music?
So yes, my wife is from Belgium and she speaks Dutch and Flemish and French and German and English and some Swedish and some Italian. So I speak a petit peu French, français, and then I speak in beetje Vlaams, which is a little more Flemish, the language she speaks, and some Dutch. I can order food in German, which maybe is the most important thing to know. In America, we're not really taught other languages. It's a strange thing. And when I was in school, when I was your age, Abby, I didn't think anything of it. I took some classes in French because we had to, but I never, ever had the chance to even use it. And I look back now and I think it's the one big regret I have about my education is that I never learned to speak another language. I think it's the most important thing there is for so many reasons. The two biggest ones, though, are that the moment you speak another language, your world gets so big. You realize that it's not just you and your way of doing things. There are completely other ways of people living and talking and communicating. Also, some languages, do you speak French, Abby?
Yes, I do.
Yes, there's things you can say in French that you just can't say in English, right? Like ways of expressing yourself. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
That's a beautiful thing. So that makes then the second part, which is that must mean there's ways of thinking differently in different languages, right? You can actually see the world in a whole different way if you've got those other languages. And if you can move between them, your mind just works faster and clearer. And I think you're more empathetic. I think you see other people in a much deeper way than you do otherwise. And so, Abby, can I ask real quick, did you Did you speak French at home, or did you learn it at school at
Um,
Loonston? Only at school. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. I don't know how you feel about it now, but it's this gift that you'll have your entire life. You'll be able to speak French. It's also, you'll be able to pick up other languages really quickly, much quicker than other people who haven't studied languages. And that's a real gift too, especially if you're in Germany and you just need a sandwich. You'll pick it up really quickly. Thanks for your question, Abby.
Thank you.
Next, we have Cloverdale Catholic School in Surrey, British Columbia.
Hi, Mr. Zimmer. Whitacre, sorry. Through your work with Disney and with so many other legendary music creators such as Hans Zimmer, do you feel like your life is a dream sometimes? We are sure it's hard to work, but we also feel like you live and express imagination of childhood. Is that something that comes out in how you write your music?
What an absolutely beautiful question. So yes, talking about working with Hans Zimmer, he's a film composer. Many of you probably know his scores, right? So I worked on Pirates of the Caribbean 4. I wrote that music with Hans. And then I also worked on Kung Fu Panda 3 and Batman versus Superman. And also I made a virtual choir for Disneyland that was crazy beautiful, because if any of you have ever been to Disneyland, they have this show where they shoot water up this giant lake, thousands of people stand around. Have you seen this before? Right, where they shoot the water up in the air and then they project film onto it. And so for the virtual choir I made, not only could you see all the singers floating on the mist of the water, but everybody had the Mickey Mouse ears that have the lights in them. So they were changing colors with whatever was happening in the water. It was so beautiful. And yes, I do feel oftentimes like my life is like that it's just a dream. I have to pinch myself. I can't believe that this is what I get to do for my day, that every day I get to make music and I get to live in a world of imagination like that. And you also mentioned this idea of like a childlike. Can I ask how old you are, by the way?
I am 12.
12, yeah. 12 is right on the edge of that childlike thing and that other thing, right? For me, I look back, 12 was probably the biggest year of my life in terms of just how my mind awakened. And I think I ask because maybe now at 12, you're able to sit right in the middle, look at children and see that children do this thing without thinking about it, right? I think if you say to a child, you see the world so innocently and like a child has no idea what you're talking about, right? They're like, no, I just see the world. Right? But when you're 12, then you start to become aware that, oh, there's this other way of thinking, and you can kind of see both sides, right? And for me, I always felt that as I got older, the idea about thinking like a child or living the day like a child was always seeing things for the first time. I think children have this beautiful capacity to just see a thing, right? So let's say you're out on a walk in nature and you see a falcon flying in the air. You look up and you don't have baggage or you don't have associations with it or even an emotional response. It just is what it is. And you're seeing it for the very first time. It's what I call beginner's mind. That, I think, is the most important thing you can do after you turn 12, when you become an adult, is keep this sense of a beginner's mind. It's so easy to say, I know that, I know what I'm doing, I know how this is supposed to go. But if you can keep your mind open and awake, then everything, our conversation, this little Zoom screen, this microphone sitting in front of me, everything becomes new and fascinating. And that fascination is curiosity. And that curiosity is what children have without thinking about it. They're simply curious about the world. It's not manufactured. It's not something they have to do. They're just fascinated. And that is the best way you can live your life as an adult, I think.
Mr. Whitacre, last week we interviewed scientist Kate the chemist and started our STEAM series of interviews. One of the many incredible things you've done is your work on the IMAX movie Deep Field, which was a cooperation between you and NASA and has been used for STEAM education around the world. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, I absolutely can. By the way, is that Bell, or are we going to different classes? I just I got this terrible feeling in my gut, like, oh God, I'm late for a class. I haven't felt that in years. Did you have to go, or can you stay in class right now?
Yeah, I can say.
Okay, you're good. Don't you hate that bell? It's like, ugh, can't they come up with some better sound? Like, hey, it's time for something new instead of, okay. So, so I got to work with NASA on this piece, Deep Field, like you said. So since I can remember, since I was 9 years old, I've wanted to be an astronaut and an astronomer. I had a little telescope. I grew up in northern Nevada, which is like cowboy country on the west coast of America. And I would go out every night because there's no light pollution at all. It's very dark desert skies. And I would with my telescope, find planets and stars and nebula. And to be honest, I still am hoping to get to space. This is really, you hear about a bucket list. I only have one item on my bucket list, which is go to space. And so it's funny now, like you said, there's this STEAM initiative. This is how educators are trying to figure out how to teach all of this. STEAM, right, stands for science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. Yeah, fine. Okay. For me, it's just a fascination about our world around us. They're just different. The arts and science, to me, are exactly the same disciplines. Exactly. You're looking for truth. That's it. Artists tend to look for human truth, and scientists tend to look for objective, verifiable truth, but it's the same feeling. And every scientist I'm ever around just reminds me of an artist. We all kind of have the same thing. So it's funny that we have this name for it and kind of wrap it all up. Working with the NASA people, I got to go to Kennedy Space Center several times. I got to sit in the control center. I got to meet a bunch of astronauts. I got to see a couple rockets lift off. I even got to go to the Space Telescope Science Institute in Baltimore and hang out with these people whose job is to build telescopes and look at the furthest light in the universe. It's beyond a dream. I can't tell you. I just spent the whole time. It was like I was hanging out with my favorite rock band. It was like, oh my God, these people are all heroes to me. And yeah, it's a long, long way of saying, especially when you're hearing these things like STEAM, don't think about them as separate things. Just think about them as being curious about the way the world works. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephanie, would you close with question 10? Do you have the question with you?
As I unmute. Yes, I do.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Just before we close with question 10, so Young Global Citizens is in the process of publishing its own book, and it'll be called Coast to Coast, How Kids Came Together During a Pandemic to Help the Planet.
Wow.
And all proceeds of this book are going to clean water access for Indigenous communities, potentially other initiatives along the way as well, but this is the main one. Young Global Citizens would like to know if you would be willing and if you would like to contribute to the book for the kids to enjoy. And it could be something like including a special link in the book that people could follow online and to access some of the wonderful things that you've created, made, been part of, participatory in all things that are bigger than just yourself, Eric. So that's the final question.
So the answer is easy. No,
yes,
it's a
not
yes.
to put you on the spot, but yes, thank you.
It sounds like a beautiful project. And yes, of course, I would love to be a part of it in any way that I can.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much. Mark, do you have anything else that you'd like to say before we close our interview today?
I was on Facebook receiving messages, and that's my bell. I'll wait for my bell. Okay. And we get messages from people watching this right now, and they say that they're crying because of how beautiful this is. And
Wow.
we hope we will. They say every word is really touching their hearts. And we even said, you are a treasure for us today. So thank you so much.
Wow.
It's a pretty high praise here.
Thank you.
So that's, I hope we get to share this video to as many people as we can. And maybe after we edit, maybe you'll help us to share the video to others.
Yeah, of course.
Other teachers. So thank you. Thank you.
I would love to. Yeah, I can certainly share it on my social media. And yeah, thank you. I'm really touched by that. Maybe you could have everybody send a note to my wife saying what a treasure I am.
Okay.
Done. We will do that. Eric, no, really, you are a treasure. And today was just such a gift to all of the children and faculty that are listening to the questions and answers of this. It reminds me of, if I could describe it in like a picturesque way, Young Global Citizens is kind of like one drop in the water, or one drop in the ocean. And the power of the ripple of one drop is powerful enough in itself. But the power of one drop in unison with all of these other drops worldwide in the same oceans, and the ripple effect and the power of that is profound. It's huge. It's massive. And that's what we want to do, and inspire our young people to know that the power of their one drop is profound, and in unison with the rest is just, it's everything.
How beautiful.
Thank you.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, and how you've done that with the virtual choirs is just, again, those, each voice, that one drop, it's very beautiful. So from all of us here, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you all. And be well up there. Students, hopefully you can see that we're starting to get toward the end of this. We're starting to see the light. I'm hoping very soon they'll announce, vaccines for people your age. I think that's probably coming pretty soon. And then finally, you'll be able to do this the way it's supposed to be done, not over Zoom, not in these little boxes with the masks. In the meantime, you're all fantastic. Thank you for working so hard and doing so well during these really strange and difficult times. Oh, students, can I say one last thing? Remember how I was talking before about how stressful this all is for teachers? If you just take a moment and write a sentence, one sentence, maybe two sentences, to one of your teachers who's helped you a little bit or has just shined the light a little brightly during this time that you've been with them, just send them a message. You can't imagine the impact this will have for these people who are getting up every day, doing everything they can to make sure that you get your boat across the water. Yeah, just one or two sentences for them. Be well, everyone.
You can unmute yourselves and say goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Be in touch.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.